Dealing with loneliness. When being alone starts to change you, loneliness can begin so quietly that I don't even realize how much it is changing me. At first, being alone might just mean having a few empty evenings. Maybe nobody calls. Maybe I don't have anywhere to go on the weekend. Maybe I spend more time at home than I used to. None of it necessarily seems serious by itself, but eventually, loneliness can become something much bigger than simply being physically alone. It can become the atmosphere of my life. I wake up alone, I eat alone, I spend hours inside my own thoughts. I watch other people living their lives through YouTube, social media, television, and the internet. And sometimes it feels like I'm watching the entire world through a window. Everybody seems to be going somewhere. Everybody seems to know somebody. And I'm sitting there wondering how I became so disconnected from everything. That's one of the hardest things about dealing with loneliness. Eventually, social isolation can start feeling normal. Loneliness isn't always about having nobody around. I've learned that there's a major difference between being alone and feeling lonely. I can be surrounded by people and still experience emotional loneliness. I can walk through a crowded city, go to work, ride a train, sit in a restaurant, or scroll through thousands of people online and still feel completely disconnected. Because loneliness isn't necessarily about the number of human beings around me. It's about connection. It's about feeling understood. It's about having someone I can talk to without constantly filtering myself. It's about having someone who notices when I'm missing. Someone who wonders how I'm doing. Someone I can tell something insignificant to simply because I want to tell somebody. Those little interactions seem meaningless until they're gone. Then I realize how important they actually were. Human connection isn't always some dramatic heart-to-heart conversation. Sometimes it's somebody sending me something funny because they thought I would understand it. Sometimes it's hearing somebody say, "What are you doing later?" Sometimes it's simply knowing that somewhere in the world another person is thinking about me. When those experiences disappear for long enough, loneliness starts getting heavier. The modern loneliness epidemic is something I think about. I also think loneliness has become one of the defining problems of modern life. We have more ways to communicate than almost any generation in human history, yet millions of people feel isolated. We have smartphones, social media, we have text messages, we have video calls, we have online communities, we have dating apps, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have TikTok. Every possible form of digital communication. And somehow, genuine human connection can still feel incredibly difficult to find. That's the strange contradiction of modern loneliness. I can see everybody without actually knowing anybody. I can know what hundreds of people did today without having a single meaningful conversation with them. I can watch someone's entire life online while they don't even know I exist. That isn't necessarily friendship. It isn't necessarily community. And it doesn't always satisfy the need for real human connection. Sometimes social media actually makes feeling alone worse because I'm constantly being shown images of other people's friendships, relationships, vacations, parties, families, accomplishments, and social lives. I'm seeing everybody's highlight reel while experiencing my own life from the inside. That's an unfair comparison. But my brain doesn't always recognize that. I just see people together while I'm alone. And eventually, I start asking myself, what's wrong with me? When loneliness becomes personal, this is where loneliness can become dangerous to my sense of self-worth. Because after being isolated for long enough, I can stop thinking I'm lonely and start thinking nobody wants me around. Those are two completely different statements. One describes my current circumstances. The other becomes a judgment about who I am. And once loneliness becomes part of my identity, everything starts getting filtered through it. Someone doesn't text me back. My mind says they don't like me. Someone cancels plans. My mind says nobody wants to spend time with me. I see people having fun without me. My mind says everybody else belongs somewhere except me. Eventually, I might stop trying. And that's one of the cruelest cycles of chronic loneliness and social isolation. I want human connection because I'm lonely. But because I've been lonely for so long, social situations can start making me uncomfortable. I become self-conscious. I overthink conversations. I wonder whether people actually want me there. I might interpret neutral behavior as rejection, so I withdraw. Then because I withdraw, I become even more isolated. And because I'm more isolated, my loneliness becomes stronger. It becomes a loop. Loneliness creates withdrawal. Withdrawal creates isolation. Isolation creates more loneliness. Breaking that cycle isn't easy, but recognizing it matters. I can't wait until I feel ready. One thing I'm beginning to understand about overcoming loneliness is that I can't necessarily wait until I suddenly become confident, motivated, outgoing, and socially comfortable. That day might never magically arrive. Sometimes I have to move before my emotions catch up. And that doesn't mean suddenly becoming the most social person in the world. I don't need 50 friends. I don't need to attend parties every weekend. I don't need thousands of followers. I don't need to completely reinvent my personality. Dealing with loneliness can become much smaller than that. Maybe spend an hour somewhere around other people instead of staying home. Maybe I become a regular at a coffee shop. Maybe I take a class. Maybe I volunteer. Maybe I join a walking group, art group, fitness class, religious community, hobby club, support group, book club, or local organization. Maybe I message somebody I haven't spoken to in a while. Maybe I stop assuming that reaching out makes me desperate. Because connection has to begin somewhere. And sometimes the first step isn't finding my best friend. Sometimes the first step is simply getting back into the world. Familiarity matters more than I realized. Friendship usually doesn't happen instantly. Most meaningful relationships are built through repeated contact. I see somebody once. Then again. Then again. Eventually, we recognize each other. Then we talk. Then maybe the conversation becomes longer. Then one day that person isn't a stranger anymore. That's how community is often created. Slowly. This is important because when I'm extremely lonely, I might expect every social interaction to immediately solve my loneliness. If it doesn't, I get discouraged. I go somewhere once, don't connect with anybody, and think, see, this doesn't work. But maybe I haven't failed. Maybe I simply haven't been there long enough. Human connection often requires repetition. I need places where people recognize my face. Places where someone notices whether I showed up. Places where conversations don't have to start from zero every time. That's why dealing with loneliness isn't only about meeting people. It's about creating consistency. Learning to be alone without feeling abandoned is another side to overcoming loneliness that I think is just as important. I need to learn how to be alone without interpreting solitude as proof that I've been rejected by the world. Because even if I build friendships and relationships, there will still be moments when I'm alone. Everybody experiences solitude. The question is what happens inside my mind when that solitude arrives. Do I immediately think nobody cares about me? Do I start scrolling social media and comparing myself with everyone else? Do I spend hours replaying old mistakes? Do I convince myself that my future will look exactly like my present? Or can I gradually create a life that still has meaning when nobody else is standing beside me? That might mean creating art, writing, reading, walking, learning something, exercising, cooking, listening to music, building something, working toward a goal, exploring somewhere new, spending time outside, developing a spiritual practice, doing something that reminds me that my life is still happening. Because loneliness becomes especially painful when my entire life feels like it's waiting for another person to arrive. I don't want to spend years waiting to begin living. Loneliness lies about the future. One of the biggest things I'm trying to remember is that loneliness makes temporary situations feel permanent. If I'm lonely tonight, my mind tells me I'll always be lonely. If I don't have close friends right now, my mind tells me I'll never have close friends. If a relationship ended, my mind tells me nobody will ever love me again. But I don't actually know that. None of us know exactly who we're going to meet. I don't know where I'll be a year from now. I don't know which conversation will unexpectedly become important. I don't know which stranger will eventually become a friend. I don't know what community I haven't discovered yet. My current social life isn't necessarily my permanent social life. That's something I have to remind myself of. Especially on the difficult nights. The first goal isn't happiness. In dealing with loneliness, I think it's tempting to make happiness the immediate goal. But that's enormous. Maybe the first goal should simply be movement. One conversation, one walk, one phone call, one new place, 1 hour outside, one attempt to reconnect, one decision not to disappear completely into isolation. Those things might sound small, but when someone has been socially isolated for months or years, they're not small. They're beginnings. And beginnings matter. I don't have to solve my entire life tonight. I don't have to figure out how to make friends immediately. I don't have to suddenly stop feeling lonely. I just have to stop treating loneliness like a final destination. Because loneliness is something I'm experiencing. It isn't necessarily who I am. There are still people I haven't met. There are still places I haven't gone. There are still conversations I haven't had. There are still versions of my life that I haven't experienced. And maybe dealing with loneliness begins with something as simple as believing that connection is still possible. Not guaranteed. Not immediate. But possible. And sometimes possibility is enough to make me try one more time. Dealing with loneliness. Why loneliness gets harder the longer you're alone is one of the strangest things I've discovered about loneliness. is that the longer I'm alone, the harder it can become to stop being alone. You would think the opposite would happen. You would think that after spending enough time isolated, I would become desperate for human connection and naturally start reaching out to people. Sometimes I do, but chronic loneliness can work differently. The longer I experience social isolation, the more comfortable isolation can become. Not necessarily because I enjoy it, but because I understand it. Being alone becomes predictable. I know what happens when I'm alone. Nobody rejects me. Nobody misunderstands me. Nobody embarrasses me. Nobody disappoints me. I don't have to figure out what somebody is thinking about me. I don't have to wonder whether I'm talking too much or too little. I don't have to worry about whether I'm interesting enough. Isolation can become painful and comfortable at the same time. And that's what makes dealing with loneliness complicated. Isolation can become a habit. People often talk about loneliness as though the solution is simple. Just go meet people. Just make some friends. Just get out of the house. Just join something. But when I've been isolated for a long time, it isn't always that easy. Because loneliness doesn't only change my schedule, it can change my habits. It can change the way I think. It can change how I interpret other people. It can change my confidence. It can even change how comfortable I feel having a normal conversation. When I spend enough time alone, I become accustomed to controlling my environment. I decide when I eat. I decide what I watch. I decide where I go. I don't have to compromise. I don't have to explain myself. Then suddenly I'm around other people again, and social interaction requires adjustment. People interrupt. People disagree. People misunderstand. People have different moods. Sometimes conversations become awkward. Sometimes plans change. Sometimes somebody doesn't respond the way I expected. These things are normal parts of human relationships. But after prolonged isolation, normal social friction can feel overwhelming. So I retreat back to the place where everything is predictable, my own world. And slowly, without realizing it, loneliness becomes a lifestyle. I started losing my social confidence. Another thing that can happen with long-term loneliness is that I start doubting my ability to connect with people. Social confidence is almost like a muscle. When I'm regularly talking with people, making jokes, telling stories, meeting strangers, and participating in conversations, I don't think much about it. I just do it. But when I've been alone for a long time, suddenly I start thinking about everything. Where should I look? Am I talking too much? Am I talking too little? Did that joke sound stupid? Why did they answer me like that? Should I have said something different? Did I make things awkward? Do they actually want me here? A 5-minute conversation can turn into an hour of analysis afterward. That's exhausting. And eventually, I might decide that avoiding social situations is easier than constantly analyzing them. But avoidance doesn't rebuild confidence. It usually does the opposite. The less I interact with people, the more unfamiliar social interaction becomes. The more unfamiliar it becomes, the more anxious I feel. The more anxious I feel, the more I avoid it. Again, loneliness becomes a cycle. Loneliness can make me expect rejection. This might be one of the most damaging parts of emotional loneliness. After enough disappointment, I can start expecting rejection before it even happens. If someone takes a while to answer a message, I assume they're ignoring me. Someone seems distracted during a conversation, I assume they're bored with me. Someone doesn't invite me somewhere, I assume they don't like me. Someone cancels plans, I assume they never wanted to see me in the first place. Sometimes those interpretations might be correct, but sometimes they're completely wrong. People have their own lives. They're tired. They're busy. They're distracted. They're dealing with family problems. They're working. They're worried about money. They're dealing with relationships. They're exhausted. They forget things. They have bad days. Not everything another person does is a statement about my worth. That's something loneliness can make difficult to remember. When I'm starving for connection, every interaction feels important. Every unanswered message feels enormous. Every rejection feels like confirmation of something I already fear, that nobody wants me. But one person's reaction to me doesn't define my value. Making friends as an adult is different. I also think adult loneliness is especially difficult because making friends as an adult is completely different from making friends when I'm younger. When I'm a kid, friendship happens almost accidentally. I go to school every day. I see the same people. We sit next to each other. We play together. We have lunch together. We're constantly placed into situations where relationships can develop naturally. Then adulthood arrives. Everybody becomes busy. People work different schedules. People move. People get married. People have children. People become exhausted. Some friendships disappear. Others slowly fade without anybody intentionally ending them. Then one day, I look around and realize my social circle has become much smaller, and I don't know how to replace it. This is something millions of adults experience. Adult loneliness isn't necessarily proof that someone is unlikable. Sometimes modern adult life simply doesn't create enough opportunities for repeated human connection. Work, home, phone, sleep, repeat. That's not exactly an environment designed for building community. So, if I want connection, sometimes I have to intentionally create opportunities that used to happen automatically. I have to become a regular somewhere. I've started thinking differently about how friendships actually form. Instead of asking, where can I meet friends? Maybe a better question is, where can I repeatedly encounter the same people? That's different. Because friendship usually grows from familiarity. The same coffee shop, the same gym, the same park, the same class, the same volunteer organization, the same library, the same community center, the same art group, the same religious community, the same local event, the same walking route. The specific place matters less than the repetition. When people see me repeatedly, something changes. At first, I'm a stranger. Then I'm familiar. Then maybe we acknowledge each other. Then maybe we talk. Eventually, there might be a relationship. That's how many friendships begin. Not through some magical instant connection. Through repeated, ordinary encounters. And I think that's important for anyone dealing with loneliness. I don't necessarily need to find my people immediately. Maybe I just need to start appearing somewhere consistently. Small connections still count. Loneliness can also make me dismiss small interactions because they don't seem significant enough. A 2-minute conversation with a cat feel like friendship. Saying hello to a neighbor doesn't feel like friendship. Talking briefly with somebody at the gym doesn't feel like friendship. But those interactions still matter. They remind me, my brain, that I'm part of a social world. And sometimes small connections become bigger connections. The person I casually talk to today might become someone I know 6 months from now. The stranger I see every morning might eventually become familiar. Human relationships grow in ways I can't predict. I have to give them room to develop. I can't force every connection. Another difficult lesson is accepting that not everybody is going to be my friend. I might reach out to somebody and get nothing back. I might attend something and feel completely out of place. I might meet somebody I like who doesn't seem particularly interested in knowing me. That hurts. Ugh.